No more meat for you. No meat for you.
Alrighty. We are rolling. This is the second time you and I sat to. Actually, this is the third. We did one early on in the podcast journey.
Down in the lower garage.
When that guy on YouTube was just slamming you hard. And that was actually, it was a great question, and I thought you had a great answer for it, but...
Well, why don't we remind the audience what that was all about?
I don't remember. It was
he was accusing me of trying to have it both ways, where I think it was...
You were complaining
we were promoting fishing, and then we were complaining about how many people were on the water.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you made a great point.
Yeah, no, I was guilty of that. And the thing is like, as an older guy, you always want to go back to the good old days, but the good old days are no longer here. And we have to accept the fact that there are more people out there, and everybody loves what we do, whether it be in the woods or on the ocean, and it's okay. We just have to kind of adjust our heads to the whole thing and realize that it's going to be harder to find those special places where there isn't anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A little housekeeping. Great job on your elk hunt. You crushed it. Great job.
Yeah, we blanked for the first time in a long time.
Tag soup. You could have killed a small 5x5, but you didn't, Andy.
And you passed on a really easy pack out on a raghorn yourself. So what's up with that?
It was like the third day of hunting, and there was a really mega 6x6 behind him. So I wasn't gonna settle for a small 5 when I have this like really amazing animal right behind that was communicating, and I thought there was a chance of me killing that bigger bull, so I passed. But
well, you're not going to kill a giant bull if you kill a young one or a little one, right? So you got to hold out, and that's the price you pay at the end of the season when you don't get something, when you're trying to get something, of substance. But we have plenty of meat, so we're all good.
Yeah, we're all good. Well, we have some questions.
You know what I'd like to bring up just before we get going a little bit into the questions that our audience has for us is the level of commitment as a professional guide, whether it be a hunting or a fishing guide. And I have experienced this, for a fairly long period in both worlds. And I don't understand how somebody who wants to be really good at something doesn't hold themselves accountable to understanding the nature of what their job is. As a fishing guide, what flies to use, where your fish are, what time of day, what tides, and be really proactive in being a perfectionist. Same as an elk hunting guide.
Yeah, I think you're alluding to our elk hunting guide.
Yeah, it was terrible. Here we go. And we pay a substantial amount of money, and it was fairly well vetted by a friend of ours. And we ended up hunting for 6 days with a guide who had no idea where all the game trails were, where the animals bed, where they gravitate to, where they move to. And his calling was just abysmal, completely inadequate, incapable of making a decent cow call or a bugle. And thankfully, we know how to do all that. But here is a guy who has never killed an elk with his bow. He has never guided a hunter to a bow kill. He's only guided 1 year. And now here he is, our guide, guiding us. And we pay all this money.
Well, not all the money is, we burned 6 preference points. We waited 6 years for this hunt in Wyoming.
Yeah. And a lot of money to be with a guy that was completely inept. And it's like, it's stealing from that person, from the experience that we waited a long time to hunt, and they promoted it as we're going to be around bulls, lots of animals. I said, look, I don't care if I don't kill. I said, I want to be around a number of animals. I want to be in the game. He said, you're going to be around plenty of bulls between 270 and 310. Not monsters. I don't care about the 350. I just wanted to be in the game. And it was just so disappointing. I almost hated every step.
I know.
I did hate every step for 5 days. We were there for 6. The first day I was almost ready to vomit about midday. And then from that point forward, I just wanted to leave.
The first morning we get out of the truck and he steps out and he goes, well, where you think we ought to go? And it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Right.
It's the equivalent of a skiff guide not knowing what a push-pull is. I mean,
it's almost like you get to the dock, you get in a flat skiff, and the guide asks you, well, where do you think we ought to run to?
Right.
It was almost that bad.
I mean, it was terrible.
Anyway, look, we have really taken on the challenge of understanding how to do this on our own, where you have a mouth read in your truck, and wherever you go, you have maybe an audio tape. You're calling, you're learning how to make, the calls that are needed, how to whine, how to beg, how to make an estrus call, whether it be a bugle. It's like, if you want to be good at something, you have to really apply yourself fully. Otherwise, you're just going to fail miserably.
Yeah, and that applies to fishing guides as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we asked our fellow listeners, if they had any questions for us that they'd like to hear us answer. And the first question, I guess, let's go with BH Fairweather Jr. He says, advice for someone that is getting into competitive saltwater fly fishing. Any practice tips?
I would say anybody who wants to compete in anything, you've got to have a great mentor, because it's like saying, I'm going to go to the driving range and practice my golf swing, or go to the field and practice my casting. If you don't know how to identify a tailing loop or a bad cast, how do you know how to fix it? So if you want to practice and get into the competitive fishing, like I once did, I had a great mentor with Harry Spear and all my other guides through the years. They can help guide you. They can see what you're doing on the boat. But I would say first and foremost, your cast has to be really good on both sides of the boat. A forehand cast, a backhand cast. You've got to be able to get the fly to the fish. The fish never sees the fly. You're never going to even, you'll never get the bite, right? And then you have to understand how to move the fly, how to entice that fish to bite your fly. So as far as practicing, it's like you have to fish a lot. You have to fish a lot. You have to fish long days with somebody who's really, really good, who can help lead you along. Like if you want to become an Olympic skier, you've got to win at a local level a lot of times, and then the western part of the states, and then nationally. Just like competing in fishing, let's just say if you want to become a competitive fisherman at a fairly high level in all the invitational fly tournaments in the lower keys, start small. But maybe there might be some smaller tournaments in your local area. Compare yourself to what everyone else is catching. Understand your flies, your knots. Really become a knot expert, and understand what a great loop knot is, because most loop knots break at 60%. Almost all of them. There are only a few loop knots that break at 100%. So you have to understand how to tie great knots, which knots to use, what flies to use in your casting. So
yeah, no, I agree. But I think a lot of that, the knots and the specifics, your guide can help you out with on the day, the day of the water. But as he's talking about practice tips, I think the most importantly is your casting. Well, you got to be accurate with your casting. You got to have a backhand cast. You got to, maybe have a between the boat cast where your rod's over your left shoulder if that wind's coming off your right arm, and your right hand caster. Practice that in between the boat cast. But I agree with you. I think a mentor is really crucial, but with YouTube and the technology these days, you can go on YouTube and look at some unbelievable, fly casters and teachers on there, and you can learn a lot from YouTube. But go out and put hula hoops in the field when it's blowing 25 miles an hour. I think casting accurately, that's one of the most important things.
I would say that is the most important thing. Even if you have a great fly and the fish doesn't see it, you're out of the game. But here's the thing is, the better you get at something, the better you have polished all the nuances of your sport. So let's just say your puzzle might be this big. If you have a saltwater fly fishing puzzle, and this is your casting, these are your knots, these are your flies, etc. Your sunglasses, your protective gear, your rods and your reels. Great hunters and great fishermen have a puzzle with a gazillion million parts, and every one is polished to perfection. Because what's going to happen if you want to compete at a high level in anything you do, your weakest link will be exposed at some point. And you will lose that fish, you will lose that elk, you will lose at that game. So you have to polish the smallest of nuances to find your perfection.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's go on to the next question. Good friend Colin Traverso says, thoughts on technology entering tarpon fishing, trolling motors and sonar specifically? And I guess drones can be put into that question as well. I mean, first I would say trolling motors have been out for a while, right? Yeah, that's not a new technology in the world of saltwater fishing, saltwater fly fishing. Trolling motors have been out for a while. Mm-hmm. And look at our good friend Doug Kilpatrick. When someone has an injury and, you know, they're a full-time fishing guide, they need to stay on the water. And if he has a bum shoulder and he can't pull the boat in 20-mile-an-hour winds, that trolling motor is there to help him out. So I think in certain instances, a trolling motor is not really a negative tool.
Look, I think that there are situations where all of these things are applicable. Let's just say, you know, certain individuals use drones to fish. And I know that on cloudy days, you'll never see a fish. And that gives them access to those fish. But two, you have to take a look at the fish's perspective. Is there never a day where they can rest and hide and not be bothered?
Right.
You know, so I'm looking at it as both as an angler, a guide, and from conservation's point of view, that these things need to have some downtime. So drones, is that ethical? I guess it is, because it's not illegal. So
yeah, but it doesn't have to be illegal for it to be.
No, I get that, but I'm just saying there are a lot of people that are going to say, I would never do this. And we did a podcast with one of the great drone flyers, and we get into the drone conversation, and it's like, okay, so are you making this almost like a daily thing, and this is a common thing to use drones? And I said, so jump forward 20 years. So now everybody on the flats, whether it be from Key West or to Apalachicola, around the world, every boat's got a drone. Is that where we're going? So at some point,
I just think that the drone, I don't think drones necessarily help you out in every scenario.
I'm just talking hypothetically, okay, about drones, right? Would Steve Huff ever fish a drone? You know? So a lot of times when you're in question as to what you want to do, and sometimes it's like you're on this fence, it's think, okay, what would this guy do? The most respected man in all of fishing, what would he do? And then do it the way he would do it.
Right. What about sonar? I know there's a lot of conversation, especially in the Everglades, in Whitewater Bay and Everglades National
Live
Park,
scope.
about live scope, and sonar and forward-facing sonar. I
experienced it last year, and I have another friend, Will Underwood, who is fishing up where he is in a little bit northern part, in the Carolinas maybe. He's from Atlanta, and he might get 2 bites over a period of 3 days blind casting in Tannic water, and he went with a guy that had live scope, and he hooked 8 that day. So I guess that if you are a professional guide and you are in that kind of a situation, your job probably won't have much longevity as a guide if you're only going to get 1 or 2 bites over a period of 3 or 4 days. So it makes it job sustainable, right? And a lot of these fish, if it's off-color water, they're not going to be bothered a whole lot because they're hard to find, you know, unless you're just blind casting and it's hard to really get a bite that readily, blind casting. So live scope enables them to really have, a solid day. So if you compare a live scope to drones, how do we compare that? Mm-hmm. It's very similar.
I'm just in the camp of sometimes the fish, it's okay if the fish win.
I am too.
Yeah. So I'm not a huge proponent of that.
But, as far as the live scope is concerned, I don't know. I see it and I see how well it works. I think I'm totally against drones, but I think live scope works if you're fishing muddy water all the time.
Yeah, but it's kind of the same thing. You're using technology to your advantage to catch more fish.
Because with the drones, on a clear day, you can see your fish. So on a cloudy day, you use drones to still see them. I think those cloudy days, the fish have a day off.
Okay, so if you're in muddy water in the Everglades and you can't see them from the polling platform, that you don't think they should have the day off as well if they have better camouflage than what we can see? You think we should resort to newer technology where we can see underneath the water, 50 feet to the right?
I just don't know how accurate live scope is and how deadly it is compared to a drone.
Yeah. Because
seeing the live scope and fishing with a guy that had a live scope, it was not that deadly. You could see fish out there, but we got a few bites, yes. But with a drone, it's exactly where that fish is. And, I just think that there's a little bit of a difference.
Okay. Alrighty. Next question. Dingus10 says, who is your idol? Who's your idol, Andy?
Who's my idol? I've got a lot of idols. I think,
I would say in the fishing space, or maybe who was your idol when you were first getting started? Who is still today?
I was lucky to have, Flip and Lefty Cray as great friends. Lefty wrote the introduction to my book. Steve Huff wrote my nominating letter to get into the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's probably one of the most respected guides of all time, with his ethics, his moral compass, how he fished, how hard he fished. And I think he has probably inspired me more than anyone. And I think, too, he has probably inspired more people in the fly fishing space than anyone. He has inspired people to what boats they run, how they dress, how they fish, how hard they fish. I think Steve is probably the man when it comes to the ultimate mentor and iconic, hero, in so many ways. Here's a guy whose father left him at a very young age, and his father left him with a fishing rod. He caught a snook, and he always wanted to be a fishing guide, right? And on our podcast, he talks about the evolution of permit fishing with Del Brown and how they finally figured out that they needed a sinking fly. They were cutting edge. They figured out how to do a lot of things on their own without anybody before them. And when I asked Steve on our podcast, how would you like to be remembered? His modesty was very well loudly heard when he said, only my kids need to know who I am. That's all that matters. So there's no ego whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So Steve has done nothing more than chase his heart in the great outdoors and has been really cool with what he's done. And here he started out and still fishes out of a 16-foot boat, but yet he's being inducted into the Captain and Crew Hall of Fame, which is a hall of fame for offshore captains, marlin captains around the world. There's no skiff guide in the Captains and Crew Hall of Fame until Steve was inducted last year. And he's going to be honored by the American Museum of Fly Fishing this fall. So I would say, Lefty was a great promoter. He taught us all about what humility was about. He was great with you know, he was always smiling and laughing and telling jokes. Flip paved the way and showed us what could be done through Walker's Cay. So these guys kind of like brought the masses to the game. But over here in the corner was Steve Huff doing it his way, by himself, with not promoting in any way, not chest pounding in any way. You know, he caught world record tarpon over in Homosassa. He won, I think it was 6 fall fly bonefish tournaments. He won 3 gold cups, but he never promoted any of it. He just went about his way. And here's this guy that I think, for the most part, is the most important man in flats fishing.
Yeah,
that there ever has been.
Totally agree. Move that mic a little bit to your left. Next question, Cody Rubner. How do we properly honor the legends our sport seems to be losing every few months?
By talking about who these guys are. We honor them by celebrating them, celebrating what they did, celebrating their personalities and their storytelling. Unfortunately, there are a lot of great legends that haven't had their story told on a big stage. And ultimately, we're just going to be a name on a wall.
Yeah, but I think that this is what this podcast is all about.
For sure. I mean, while we can, over the last 5 years and 150 some interviews with these gentlemen, we have tried to get that story. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was told to me a long time ago, and I think I've mentioned this before, is in the world of broadcasting, someone once told me, who cares if Aunt Mary's farm burns down if you don't know who Aunt Mary is, right? And so when we first started this podcast, it was like, let's go find out who Aunt Mary is of all of our guests. What makes these guys tick? And those stories make us want to love them that much more. Once you understand that they're pretty much common people like you and I, but they've done, you know, incredible things that no one else has done, or they have certain stories that they're going to be remembered by. But unfortunately, time will erase a lot of that, you know. So we just have, as far as our podcast is concerned, we have to do the best we can to chase these older guys down, because but just look how many of our guests have already passed, you know. So that's pressure on us, but also I think it's pressure on the industry as a whole. As a whole, we have to keep talking about these guys and what they've done and love them to death, you know?
Mm-hmm. Henrik says, would like to hear more about the gear you guys use and most guests are running. Also, top 5 rankings on skiffs you have been on.
Well, you know, if you take a look at freshwater fishing, a reel is a piece of jewelry where almost any reel would work in the freshwater game. And if you're using really 7X, light 7X, 8X tippets or whatever, you need to have a nice smooth drag. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter a whole lot.
Yeah, a lot of people are just stripping the line in.
Yeah, but in the saltwater game, you need to have a reel that can really work as a tool. It's got to have a great drag. And, you know, I wish I had a saltwater reel with me and I can explain why it's so important to pick out the right reel. Obviously, I've been working with Hardy for the last 15 years, and I think it's imperative that on a saltwater reel, you have a drag knob that goes from almost zero drag to 100% in one turn. The reason being is that you can mark certain distances on that drag on the back of the reel wall to determine where 5 pounds is, 8 pounds, 10 pounds. Because if you have a drag knob that just keeps turning and you don't know where you are, how do you know when the reel drag is too tight?
And the only reels on the market today that are like that are the Hardys and the Makos.
Yeah. And the Siegler reel has a little lever. Right. But I think those 3 reels will give you as an angler a good perspective about how much drag you have on that fish, so you can back it off. Fish goes under the boat, you go to 0, comes around the other side of the boat, you go to 5 pounds, 8 pounds, wherever you want to be. So it's a precise drag. And you absolutely, as a saltwater fly fisherman, you have to have that drag as such. Because if you're just spinning, you're guessing. Unless it's measured and you leave it, you can never move it. Because once you move it from that setting, you'll never know where to get back to that same spot.
So anyways, let's get back to the question.
Right.
He wants to hear more about our gear and what most guests are running. I would say the most popular fly rods besides the Hardy sticks are the Loomis, right?
Probably the Loomis and the Hardy. And the great thing about a rod, let me go into this for a second. Most people get a fly rod and see how far they can cast it. So that rod typically that's going to cast really a long ways has got a fairly stiff tip, because when you bend it, it's going to react and unbend quickly. The best fly rod is a rod that you can cast well close, where late in the day you have a fish at 30, 40 feet right here. You can just actually you just move that tip and stop it. You can turn over a 15-foot leader. So that rod is actually going to be a better fishing rod than the ultimate long-distance casting rod. You very rarely cast 80, 90, or 100 feet on the ocean.
No, your average shot's 40, 50 feet.
Own 60. If you can own 60 feet, you're going to catch a lot of fish. So you want to find a rod that will cast easily close distances. And that's where I think Hardy is, what we've done so well with, is that rod being built with the Syntrix resin and the nano silica particles, that when you bend it, those silica nano particles push against each other, making that rod almost unbreakable. We break less than 1% of our product, and the average is about 3 to 5% in the fly fishing space. So find a rod that casts closely and find a rod that's going to be durable. Loomis had a great rod, the NRX, but they stopped making that one-piece rod. So I would say most of the anglers in the tournament space are using one-piece Hardy rods, whether it be bonefish, permit, or tarpon. We've won all these tournaments over the last 15 years that are incredible, like the Gold Cup, the top 7 teams, Hardy rods. So take a look what people are throwing. Go to a fly shop, cast, test that rod, cast closely, cast far, find a rod that has a great spectrum to it, where you can do both. Yep. Most rods are going to throw 80, 90 feet anyway, so you don't have to worry about a rod that throws far. Find a rod that throws closely.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting that a lot of people don't know that we fish a lot of 10 weights, and mostly 10 and 11 weights. And we don't even throw a 12 weight, really, in the Keys tarpon fishing.
Here's the problem. When I was fishing tournaments, I was fishing the cross current, the Loomis cross current 12 weight. If you take that look at that rod compared to what we're throwing now with the 11s and 10s, that 12 weight, especially if you have a fly rod with the fighting grip up here, that fighting grip adds too much swing weight to your rod. So when you cast a rod, you're moving this rod through space, right? Now, if you got a big chunky handle up here, that makes it that much heavier. Now, if it's a 12 weight rod, it's stiffer. It's like trying to move a 2x4 through space. These newer, lighter rods are so easy, like the 10 weight rods to the Hardy rod. It's like casting a freshwater rod. And when you fight fish, you have plenty of lifting power with a 10 and 11 weight. You just don't need 12s in the tarpon space anymore.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if we want to answer this, but top 5 rankings on skiffs. I mean, our mangrove Chittum that we've had for the last couple of years is the greatest skiff I've ever been on, bar none. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It is, because look, if you want to find a boat, you have to figure out, where am I going to fish, and what are the fish that you're fishing for? Is it going to be a really skinny water redfish, bonefish, or are you going to be tarpon fishing running across big open water? So you have to really assess the application for that skiff.
Yeah, what's the boat for you? Yeah.
So we had, I fished out of Hell's Bays forever. I had a professional. I had the Biscayne, which I loved a lot. But the Biscayne, we couldn't fish redfish. We went red fishing one day in the Biscayne, and we're pushing across mud flats all day long. And then what'd we do? I went to Texas and found
We bought a Waterman.
We bought a Waterman.
Yeah.
So now we have to have 2 boats because the Biscayne couldn't get to the shallow water fish we were fishing for.
Yep.
But now with the Chidim boat, the carbon fiber mangrove, you can tarpon fish, you can go in skinny water, you can do it all. So it's like bay boats too. We've had a bunch of different bay boats. So if you're looking for a bay boat and you're fishing skinny, shallow water stuff with trolling motors, you're going to need a lighter boat. But the boats that we used to have were for sailfish and also to the shark fishing on the beaches, in southern Florida. The problem with certain bay boats, if you're going to be in deeper water, a lot of times they want you to buy a lighter boat. Like we had an egret one time, and they convinced me to spend $7,500 for the carbon fiber egret. I didn't need a lighter boat because I'm not pulling that boat anyway. So now you're getting out on the ocean, and if it's windy, the wind is just pushing you all the way across your, where you want to fish effectively. So a bay boat,
Your drifts are like twice as fast.
So fast.
Yeah.
So we had a Chaos. We had an Andros boat, which was, like a Ponga. And that big bow sticking up, the wind would just spin that bow everywhere.
Yeah, I think it's the question is skiffs specifically.
I'm just kind of going across the board here about anybody who wants to buy a boat. So make sure, obviously our number one skiff is the Chidim.
Yeah,
by far.
There's a lot of great skiffs out there. I mean, the Maverick makes a great boat. I fished with Eric Herstead for years, and his boat was great running boat, great pulling boat. They still make great boats. If you're looking for a shallow water, like real skinny water skiff, I mean, Brian Esposito, he was on the podcast recently. He created his own skiff brand, Glades Craft Skiffs.
And Harry Spears.
And Harry Spear is a great shallow water skiff boat. The Dolphin's still great. I mean, even when we're in the lower keys and we see like a Dolphin, like an old Dolphin super skiff, that's so unimportant.
You know what I mean? Don't get in his way.
That's so unimportant.
Yeah.
Because those old school badass guides that have been guiding for 30, 40 years, most of them still have a Dolphin.
Yeah, those are all Steve's proteges.
Yep. What did Doug say? I remember Doug Kilpatrick said, "I'm just going to paint my transom black and say it's his Chidim."
Save me $100,000.
And then there's a new boat company, Drake Boatworks, that I heard is really good. But
I would say, if you're looking for to buy a new boat, go fish in a bunch of different boats and go test them. Go run some boats and figure out what kind of motor you want to have on it. Whether you want to go fast, see how the boat sits in the water. If you have a big heavy motor, the ass is going to drag. You're not going to be able to get skinny. Figure out the combination of motor in the boat. And figure out what's going to be best before you purchase, because it's the most important purchase you're going to be making for a while.
All right, next question comes from Sawyer Pierpoint. Favorite do-it-yourself fishing destination and any bucket list destination still on your list? I'm gonna start this one off by saying I think the best do-it-yourself fly fishing destination has got to be the Bahamas.
Yeah, wade fishing.
Wade fishing the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many flats. There's so many little islands. A lot of places you can rent a golf cart and park your golf cart and get out on the flat and just wade for hours and hours and miles. That's my favorite fishing. Wading for big bonefish, or it doesn't even have to be big bonefish for bonefish. But I think the Bahamas is a great do-it-yourself fly fishing destination. I'm sure, other places like the Turks and Caicos and other Caribbean islands can be similar. But I would say the Bahamas.
And let's not forget about the Florida Keys. It's going to be hard to wade in most places, but if you can go into the Everglades if you have a boat, figure that out. Fish on the ocean side and the lower Keys for tarpon.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
But of all the places I've fished, when it comes to fishing with a fly rod and skinny water, Florida is by far and will always remain my favorite. With all the great big bonefish we used to catch, and there's more fish coming back since the big freeze in 2010. You know, permit fishing, you know, there's a big term going on right now, but primarily I would say that a DI, you know, do-it-yourself location will always be, you know, in Florida, Louisiana, possibly. The big redfish that we used to catch there with Andy Thompson.
Yeah, but running around there is sketchy, and do it yourself. When I think of do it yourself, I'm thinking of a guy or a couple or a lady who does not have a boat, who wants to fly fish.
Wants to go wading.
That's what I think of.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of do-it-yourself guys that do have boats, but I think if you're going to go wade somewhere, you know, the Bahamas for bonefish is one of my absolute favorites.
What about any bucket list destinations still on the list? Or are you done?
You know, I traveled so much for so many years when we were doing, you know, the TV show that I'd kind of like to go back to certain places, you know. And certain places I have real concern for. You know, I'm going to go to Guatemala in November. I really want to go catch some sailfish again, especially Guatemala because it's so calm. There are so many fish there. I don't want to go. I'm not necessarily interested in going marlin fishing anywhere because I get seasick and I just get bored out there. The Seychelles and the archipelago of Cosmalito. You know, that's probably where I'd like to go, the east side of Africa. The Seychelles is a chain of islands. I think there's 110 islands in the Seychelles. And I would like to go on a mothership and probably, you know, really take a closer look at that. And maybe the northern part of Australia.
Okay. I would like to go steelhead fishing. Or Atlantic salmon fishing. Yeah, I'd like to learn how to spay cast and do all that good stuff.
It's still great fishing.
Yeah.
You know, Atlantic salmon fishing, I think you've got to really be particular about where you go, what rivers have the fish.
Well, just the history of it and the way you fish and the surrounding environment. I just think all that is so cool. Mm-hmm. And hearing Tom McGuane talk about that in his books and all the literature out there about, you know, salmon fishing, I'd love to do that.
I think his chapter on permit fishing, The Longest Silence, is very similar to steelhead fishing.
Yeah. All right, next question. W.A. Petuna 11. What's a day in the Keys look like for you two together?
Well, we start early.
My dad thinks we start early. Recently, we don't start early anymore. I wake him up, and he sleeps till 9.
No, come on. You're killing me.
I got to cook him Eggs Benedict in the morning. And
well, it's a long day.
It used to be earlier. But our days used to start earlier.
They're still early enough.
Yeah,
if you get out there at 6, you can't see anything.
Yeah, but you can blind cast and throw plugs and light them up. You can. Remember, we used to wake up at 4:30 and have the boat in the water by 5:15. And now, I'm being honest, now we probably wake up around
5:30.
5:30.
Have the boat at the dock at 7.
7, and we're fishing by like 7:30.
Sometimes 7. So we're still fishing 12-hour days.
Yeah.
What do you want, 17-hour days?
You got a little soft on me the last couple of years.
So 12 hours is soft?
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, I'd say we wake up, you make your coffee in the, what is it? Bustelo? That little tin.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's like
you make a Cuban coffee.
With espresso beans and make it really strong.
We make lunches the night before. We put everything in the cooler.
It's a very quick morning. We get to the dock.
It's quick.
We get out there, light a cigar, and start pulling.
Yep. And we pull, I don't know, we'll have lunch midday. We'll drink a little bit. But for the most part, we're fishing.
We fish hard all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we come back around, I don't know, come back around 5:30 to 6.
Yeah. If it's good, you know, I mean, you fish late. You're still fishing at 6:30. When all the guides get off the water and you're looking for that one fish.
Yep.
Because that's when they're going to bite.
Wash the boat, have a couple cocktails, go to the square grouper, play shuffleboard.
Call it a night.
Call it a night. Alrighty. Next question comes from Lambo Adventures. Mag Bay deep dive into travel fishing stories. You really did not talk about your fishing trip to Mag Bay with Los Locos, and we were kind of saving that to have Rudy and George on the podcast.
I can talk about it a little bit. I was there probably about 5 years ago, rooster fishing. And it was before they had really kind of got the rooster fish dialed. So the tides, et cetera. And we had some really great rooster fishing. I caught a giant, I don't know, 50, you're guessing, but it was a giant. But it was interesting because we had a bunch of seagulls on this sandbar, and on that higher water, there was nothing going on. But once that tide started to drop, all the seagulls started flying, all the bait started getting flushed, and there were giant schools of Jack Crevalle. I mean, schools of thousands of Jack Crevalle. But out in front of that school were flying fish, and the rooster fish were targeting the flying fish. And also, too, the seagulls were over the schools of Jack Crevalle chasing sardines or whatever they were. But the frigate birds were targeting the flying fish. So in order to find the rooster fish, we would get out, we would see where these frigate birds were flying, because that's where the rooster fish were. So we would get way out in front of them. And all of a sudden, when that tide started working, the flying fish started coming. The rooster fish and the big combs were chasing the flying fish. So that flying fish had no chance. He was either going to get bit by a frigate bird or a rooster fish. And we were out there throwing flies at these bombs going off. And it was really, really exciting. It was, I mean, when you watch the ocean come alive with bait and the predators that are chasing bait and also the predators from above, it's really something to be seen. Los Locos boys, Rudy and George, have really got it dialed. And then the other time of the year when I was there last, we were offshore, striped marlin fishing. And that was really cool too, because there again, you're looking for the birds. The birds are always that's the flag where you need to go for the bait fish, and always the predators are chasing the bait fish. So you get over there, you might have seals in that big school. The striped marlin are there, and I always wanted to catch a striped marlin out of a bait ball. And that was very impressive and very cool, and not very hard at all. All you're doing is just throwing the fly out there and double hand stripping or stripping, as fast as you can, and they're going to find you. I mean, anybody can do this. It's not like you've got to be a great fisherman to go catch a striped marlin. But you need to be able to throw a fly, because that bait fish fly is pretty big and pretty heavy. But I have a little bit of a concern for Magdalena Bay, and that is you have all these big offshore boats coming up from Cabo San Lucas. And these guys are guys who are looking for the numbers game. They'll go up there and they'll catch 60 striped marlin in a day. That's how prolific it is. Meanwhile, you also have the eco tours coming in, and the people are diving on the bait balls to see, these striped marlin and see the bait. So now we're fly guys, and you have an offshore boat over here, you have divers over here, and you're trying to catch a striped marlin over here. And that's one of the problems about, everybody understanding a great spot that's starting to get a little bit overrun. I mean, right now it's great. We caught a lot of fish. They have a great operation there, but I'm a little bit worried about the future. What's that going to look like 10, 15 years down the line when a lot of these offshore boats are up there? People want to dive with these fish, and you have the fly guys trying to catch them with a fly rod.
Well, that fishery is not new by any means.
No, of course not.
Those big offshore boats have been fishing striped marlin down there for 30 years.
Right, but it's a long run. So those guys usually out of Cabo go off the tip of Mexico instead of running, 3 hours up the coast, 3 or 4 hours. So it's a long run for them to get up there.
Yeah.
And that's why Mag Bay was always so great, because it was kind of like, it was pretty far away from everywhere else.
Yep, and then the town is awesome, right?
It's awesome. No, the first couple of days.
What's the town called?
San Carlos.
San Carlos.
Yeah. First couple of days I was there, it was pretty rough offshore, and these boats are not very big. They're like 27 footers, 24 footers, I guess. So it can be pretty rough, and I had no interest in getting hurt, falling down. So I just cruised San Carlos, and we went out and picked asparagus, went to the flea markets, and I just had a great time just chilling, with a little sleepy Mexican town that had, dirt roads. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing place, and you gotta go. You really do. That's one of these great destinations that is a bucket list destination.
And George and Rudy are awesome.
The best.
The characters.
Absolutely the best.
Yeah.
You cannot miss. If you want to go catch a striped marlin, you cannot miss by going there.
Right. And hopefully we'll have them on the podcast because their story about how they found that spot and getting their pangas down there and the adventures of sinking boats and all that nonsense.
It's insane. Yeah.
We got to get them on. Steve Brown asks, why not ask questions that use stories for answers? Is there a day of fishing that stands out? Yeah,
I'll tell you. Sure, we've been doing this for a while now, and if I'm redundant with this story, I apologize. But
I'll let you know.
Okay, of course you will. Here's one of the best days of guiding that I've ever seen. I told that story.
Yeah, let's do another one.
Okay.
Or we can come back to that question. How about that? I'm going to guess you're going to say...
Doesn't matter. Let's just go on.
All right. Andrew Uchman asks, how many rods were rigged when you were tournament fishing? Who tied all the tournament flies and leaders? Who selected the flies, Andy or the guide? And when Andy tournament fished, which flies did he use, style, color, etc., and why?
Right. So when I was fishing with Harry Spear, he had a toad fly that he tied. It just looked like a toadfish. So Harry was always picking the flies out for the bonefish tournament and then the tarpon tournament. I fished 3 tournaments, 2 bonefish and a tarpon tournament with Harry, and then he was gone. And then I fished for a long time with Timmy Hoover, and people have asked, how come Timmy hasn't been on? Well, Tim Hoover is one of the great guides in the Florida Keys that's ever pulled a boat. We won 5 Gold Cups together. One of the problems about the podcast and getting guests is the logistics. So Timmy doesn't live near us, and unfortunately, he had a stroke a couple years ago, so he's recovering from a stroke. But we will have Tim Hoover on the podcast at some point. But Timmy and I fished for a long time together, and there was usually only a couple flies we ever used. He introduced me to the toad fly that he was tying, that was innovated by Gary Merriman out of Atlanta. But that toad fly was deadly. I remember the first time I had seen these flies. We checked into the Chica Lodge. We're sharing a room together. He hands me a bag of these green flies. He said, just don't even ask a question, tie them on. I looked at these things and said, are you kidding me? But they were the most deadly tarpon flies I'd ever seen, and they worked for the longest of time.
So Hoover got the toad from Gary Merriman.
Yeah, because he was fishing with Gary Merriman, and Gary tied that toad fly with a rabbit tail. Mm-hmm. But when the rabbit tail would get soggy, it would get a little soft and it would foul. So one time, Timmy ran out of rabbit tail for the tail of that toad fly, and there was a bag of extra select marabou, green marabou. So the marabou worked great because it did a lot of action, just like that rabbit tail and the feathers or the hair on a rabbit tail. That marabou would just marinate in the current. You wouldn't have to do much with it, and I found that fly actually worked better. Mm-hmm. So we used the toad fly forever, and I tied most of those flies. Matter of fact, I tied all of them. I tied all the leaders. Harry taught me how to tie a bimini twist and tie, the leader when I was fishing with Harry. And Harry and I fished together for 7 years. So, and then when I was fishing with the other guides, Dustin Huff would usually have some of the flies because he was a great fly tyer. But when I fished with Paul Tejera, I would have the Sand Devil, some toads. And then when I fished with Rob in the last tournament I fished in, We were always using his flies because he loved to tie those flies. But I was always tying the leaders, and then if I was with Timmy or Paul, I'd tie all the flies. But you always have a mixed bag of who's tying what we're using. But with tarpon, you only need probably 2 or 3 different flies.
Yeah, I remember during spring break, we'd come here to Colorado, and this table we're sitting at right now, you used to sit right to the right of me with your Regal Vice, and this whole table used to be just
green,
glittered with green extra select marabou. Mm-hmm. And I remember that week or 10 days of spring break when we were out of school, you would try to tie 100 toad flies.
Mm-hmm.
And you had Ziploc bags.
It was in March. I would tie all my tarpon flies during March when we were here skiing.
Yep.
But also, too, on the boat, I used to always have 4 rods. I'd have 2 ocean rods, maybe a sinking fly line for some dredging on, bad weather days. And then I'd have another rod with, I don't know what kind of line, but I always had 4 rods. So always at first I was a full colored line.
There were no clear tips when you were fishing.
Back then. No, it was all colored lines. That's right. But then towards the end, with Rob, I started using an all clear fly line.
Yep. Wasn't there a story one time where you lost a fish or something and you were stretching your fly line out?
Oh yeah. So I was fishing with Timmy, and we were in a bonefish tournament.
Timmy Hoover.
And we were out on Twin Key, and I hooked this bonefish, and I'm clearing him, and he's out there. My backing is way out. He's up on the shoreline and getting in the mangrove shoots, and the mangrove shoot cut my backing. So I lost my whole fly line, and I reel it in. So I pull out another rod that I had on the boat, and I was always fishing I think with an 8-weight rods. So I'm so upset that I lost this fish. I'm stretching my fly line on the rod I just pulled out. I pull it so hard I break the fly line. So now I just lost 2 fly lines in a matter of minutes. So thank God, I had another rod and a reel.
Yeah, that's why it's important to bring 3 or 4 rods.
Yeah, in case you have anger management issues.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question, Mr. Putting Face. How to succeed in passing down the fly fishing passion to our kids and not scare them away?
Yeah, I think you might be able to answer that question better than I, but I always felt it was really important for you to be around fish. You always have to be catching fish, some kind of fish, whether it be a snapper like on the dock at the Chica Lodge, or when we would go fishing, we would use mullet, live bait. Like when we were in Colorado, we did a lot of trout fishing out here. So the hook is really set, if you will, I think, with freshwater fish, maybe bass, maybe trout. So you really like, the tug at the end of the string, and then you transfer that to the ocean at some point. But it has to be in an environment where the kids are having fun, and that is dictated by having a fish on the end of the string.
Yeah. I think I'm not there yet in my life. My, Hayden is 16 months old. So I think you can speak better on this than I can. But yeah, I think you got to make it fun for them. They have to catch fish. I wouldn't take, if my kid was 5 years old, I wouldn't take him to the frying pan and, tie on a one size 24 Adams and just fish for rising fish. I mean, that's really technical. They have to be rewarded, right? And it's got to be fun.
And it can't be a long day.
No, maybe bring a great lunch and have a plan B.
Yep.
But I think you expose your kid to a bunch of different things. And if they gravitate to fly fishing or fishing, that's awesome. And if they don't, so what?
If they gravitate to it, you're lucky.
Yeah, you're lucky.
Yeah.
Because I have 2 brothers that don't like fishing. Yeah. They can't stand it. Mm. So
it's got to be fun, and I would say it's got to be started off by, hey, we're just going to go spend a part of the day near water with some fish.
Yep. Eric Johnson asks, what is your butt leader setup, including knots and materials used? And then I think we can group in this next question, clear line versus clear forward section lines. So let's just talk about tackle, our leader setup. Let's go there.
Yeah. Well, I think, they can look at the tip we've done on building leaders.
We've done a lot of videos on YouTube and Instagram.
So that would be the best way to take a closer look at that, because I'm actually building it. But basically, if you want to build a bonefish leader, and you can change that a little bit to tarpon, but for the most part, you stretch your arms to say 6 feet of a butt section. And then from the end of your fingertip to your nose, that's the next section. So if you have a 40-pound butt, the next section might be 20-pound, right? And then from the end of your fingers to your elbow, that's your tippet to, say, maybe catching bonefish or redfish. So it's 6 feet, then it's this long, and then it's to your elbow from the end of your fingers.
Okay, so let's talk about
40 to 20 to, say, maybe 12-pound test.
Let's talk about our tarpon rig. So we're going 50-pound mostly on our butt, correct?
Yeah, we go 50 and then 30-pound, and then I'll tie our leader 16-pound test to the 30-pound. So our butt section is 50 pounds, 6 feet, and then maybe about this much, maybe a little bit more if we're using 12-foot leaders. That would be a 30-pound section. And then 16 is always a shoulder width or maybe a little bit longer, because with the IGFA establishing how long your tippet can be, they say it's got to be at least 15 inches. But 15 inches is not much. So if you get a really hard bite with a big fish with 15 inches, there's not much stretch. So that class tippet, I like to have shoulder width, maybe a little bit longer. And then you have 12 inches of your bite tippet.
Okay, can you go into that a little more specifically? Like, we use an Albright knot where the 3 wraps on the Albright go over the monofilament from our fly line to our butt section connection, which Matt told us at Florida Keys Outfitters. We've done a video on that. So we do basically it's like an improved Albright for our fly line knot.
Right.
And then we do a blood knot. We don't do an improved blood knot from our 50 to 30.
Blood knot from 50 to 30, and then an improved blood knot from your 16-pound to your 30, and then an improved blood knot from your 16-pound to your butt section. And then I like the improved Homer Road loop knot to the fly. And our bite tippet over the last number of years has gone down from 80 to 70 pound in the last tournaments I fished to 60 to 50, and now we're using mostly 40 pound hard mono Scientific Angler hard mono for everything.
Cool. Clear line versus clear forwards. I think this is just basically an all clear versus clear tip.
Yeah. For me, I noticed that my right eye is 20/20, my left eye is 20/40. If you have great eyes, you can use an all clear fly line, but for me, I think it's a little bit overkill, because if you have, say, maybe a 12-foot leader, and then that clear tip is 10 to 12 feet, you have, 24 feet of clear. So if you're cutting a string, that still gives you enough clear and space from where the fly is to where the colored line is. A lot of the tournament guides are using the all clear fly lines. A lot of them are using the Scientific Angler all clear. It doesn't curl that much. You can lay it on the deck. It comes up nice and smoothly. It's the best all clear line that I've ever used. I like the clear tip myself. Now, you could probably get away with an all clear fly line, but we've had great success with the clear tip.
Yeah, and I think early in the morning, if you're fishing to rolling fish or a group of balled up school of fish on the ocean, that all clear fly line works wonders. Mm-hmm. Because you don't know how, you might see one fish roll, but there could be 15 fish on either side of that fish, and you want that clear fly line. You want a stealthy fly line to get it in there early in the morning when you can't see how many fish are in the water.
Right. No, that's where it pays really big dividends, is in that very low light situation. But once the sun is up, that clear tip is sufficient.
I mean, a lot of guys are throwing just regular colored lines.
And they're good at it, like Nathaniel Linville.
Yep.
He won the Gold Cup 2 years ago with an all clear line. But he's got such great power and speed, he can turn over a 15-foot leader, and a lot of people can't do that.
And I think guides like fishing an all-colored fly line because they can really tell where that fly is. If you're using a small worm fly, you might not be able to see that worm fly, but what you can see is the end of your colored fly line. And they can talk their angler into, stripping faster or waiting for the fish to get up on the fly. They can kind of communicate a little better because they know precisely where that fly is with a colored fly line versus that clear tip or a full clear line.
If you can, you're gonna be better off fishing with at least the clear tip.
Yeah. Let's see. What other questions do we have? Oh, Jeep Parade says, most listened to episode of the podcast. Each of your favorite episodes. Who living do you hope to get on the podcast? I think this is going to be a surprise to a lot of people. The most listened to episode of the podcast is actually not a fisherman or an angler or a guide.
Or a hunter.
It's a guy by the name of Neil Beidelman, and he was a guide on Everest, and he recounts the Everest tragedy. He was a guide on Everest when I think 8 people...
1996, when 8 people died. They got caught in a storm. They left the summit late. I think the summit departure is usually around 2:30, and they hung out there way too long, departed like 2 hours later. And on the way down to Camp 5, they got caught in a storm. So now they're up there losing oxygen canisters. They lose visibility. It's nighttime. It's blowing 70 miles an hour, and they can't find their tent. That's how you die.
No, the story is riveting, and I think a lot of the guides and anglers that are friends that listen to the podcast, that's their favorite episode. It has nothing to do with fishing or hunting. It's Neil Beidelman. I think it's early on in the podcast, like episode 15 to 30 or something.
Somewhere in there. But one of the things that he made mention of, and I asked him, I said, what's the difference between pain and suffering? And he said, it's all a matter of attitude, mental composure. And it just is a testament to how strong your mind can be. You can really have excruciating pain if you allow it to hurt you to that level. And when you're that kind of a tough guy, where life and death is in balance, you are all about survival. And like he told the people that he saved on Everest that night, he said, this is how people die, but we are not going to die. And he saved their lives.
Yeah.
Riveting podcast. You got to listen to it.
I can't give you my favorite podcast because that's not fair, but I'll give you 4 of my favorites. How about that? I would say one is, first off, is Steve Huff's, the first podcast we ever did. Another one would be the Tom Evans, Al DePeric, Dean Butler podcast that was just so raw, and it was after a day of fishing in Homosassa, and man, I've listened to that episode like 5 or 6 times, and every time I listen to it, it gets better and better. I would say Mark Croca's podcast is unbelievable, and one of my other favorites is John O'Hearn's Lower Keys guy, John O'Hearn. Those are my favorites.
We were really lucky through the 5 years to get some really extraordinary individuals. And I think this last year we were really lucky when we went to the Lefty Tie Fest and we got Oliver White and Larry Dahlberg on the podcast, because it'd be really impossible to go find these guys. I mean, they live in faraway places, and we were all there together. And, I think the greatest quote in all of angling came from Larry Dahlberg, when he mentioned the greatest thrill in all of angling is the moment of discovery. And talking about how he traveled to, 87 countries over 27 years when he produced, the hunt for big fish. A true iconic fisherman where he could go anywhere in the world and outfish the locals. I mean, he was a scientist. He was a biologist. He was an adventurer, an inventor. How he designed all of his plugs. He was a true, he was somebody I looked up to when we were watching the show, and then we actually had a chance to sit down with him, and he had that T-shirt on that said "Spiritual Gangster," and he was like just raw as you can possibly be.
No, he doesn't care.
Nope. He was amazing.
He is who he is.
And Oliver's story was incredible. You know, and that's, you know, we're just so lucky to have had these stories, you know, in front of these microphones.
I will say one other episode is Rick Ruoff's episode.
Oh,
Rick's
absolutely
amazing human being. Mm-hmm. Check that one out if you
know.
haven't.
I would really like to, as far as who do we like to get on the podcast? I would love to get Yvon Chouinard, more for when he was a dirtbag at the base of El Cap when they were climbing and living there. And they called themselves the Dirtbags, where they slept in a sleeping bag without pads. And if you had a pad under your sleeping bag, you know, you were known as, you know, weaker than the others. You know, he was a hardy dude, man. And now he's developed, you know, this company, and he's donated all of his money. They were so billions to save the planet.
They were so poor when they were climbing in Yosemite that they would eat cat food for lunch.
Yeah. I mean, I want to hear Yvonne's story.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully, Jack Nicklaus as well.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I think one of the unicorns that we never had on was Jimmy Buffett.
Right. Well, Jack Nicklaus, a lot of people don't realize what a big fisherman he was. I mean, just before he won the Australian Open one year, I think he caught like a 1,300-pound marlin. Big advocate for bone fishing. He had his own mothership, and so behind closed doors, he was always in the Bahamas chasing bonefish.
Yep. Let's see. John Clip says, what are your thoughts on the IGFA length live release records? Does it lower the bar?
No, it does not lower the bar, and I'll tell you why. Certain records are so high that they're almost unbreakable. And I'll give you an example. In the world of tarpon fishing, the 20-pound test world record is 202. The 16-pound test is 191, almost 192. 12-pound test tippet is 194-pound fish. The 8-pound is probably the most doable record at 127.5. The 6-pound world record is 143-pound tarpon. The 4-pound record is 120. No, excuse me. Yeah, the 6-pound is 143. The 4-pound record is 123. How do you catch a world record tarpon that you put on a scale? They're almost unreachable. So if you have a length record,
yeah, but that's the way it should be.
Yeah, for sure. But you're asking, are we lowering the bar by having world record length categories? And I'm just saying no, because it's different. It's comparing apples to oranges. At least you're in the game. At least there's a record to go chase and catch and establish.
And you don't have to kill the fish.
You don't have to kill the fish, and you're in the book.
Yeah.
So you can't compare the two. And it's a beautiful thing in the fact that you can still go out and chase all these world records and not have to kill any of them.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do it myself.
Yeah, it's not appealing to me.
But some people do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's it's to each their own. It's like trying to tell you that you can't fish 30-pound tests with a fly, right? Well, the IGFA says it's not fly fishing, but like Rick Ruoff says, it's a fly rod, fly reel, fly line, fly. I'm fly fishing. But you're just not inside the confines of what the IGFA has established as fly fishing.
Yeah, but do you think like in the next, do you think like in the next 10 years there are going to be awards for like biggest tail on a tarpon, biggest gill plate, biggest eye?
No.
It's like there's always more and more things that people get rewarded for. It should just be like the biggest fish in this line class. That's my thought.
Well, but I'm trying to look at it as a whole. Like, I'm trying to keep my perspective on what I like away from what's out there and what other people are doing. Like, I really don't care. I'm just glad that they're engaged, right?
Yeah.
And with the IGFA, that's part of our organization. It's a conservation organization where we can raise money and keep people engaged with fly fishing and all tackle. And with 239 reps around the world, you can go somewhere around the world and find a rep, and they'll tell you where to fish and what captains to use. So it's an engagement part of the deal with the IGFA to keep. There's a kids program, junior program. It just gives people a watery ballpark to go play in, right?
Right.
If that makes sense or not.
Yeah, I hear you out. On the Rocks MD says, what are your favorite fly fishing books? We've talked about a lot of them.
We've talked about that quite a bit, but McGuane is probably one of the greatest, fishing writer that's ever lived. More recently, Monty Burke's book about Homosassa and the great fish that swam there, the biggest tarpon in the world, and all the guys that pursued them. It's a fascinating read because he documents, what the tarpon is and why it's so special.
It's called Lords of the Fly.
Yeah, called Lords of the Fly. And the people who chased them, who were just as interesting as the fish themselves. It's like, if you go to Yankee Stadium back when Babe Ruth was hitting home runs, that's the same as what Homosassa was to the saltwater tarpon fishermen. It's a fascinating read. Any of the McGuane books are great. I like Zane Gray's stuff. I read a lot of his as far as swordfish and tuna. That book was fascinating when he was going to Catalina catching big swordfish, and then he built 3 boats in Florida and went to the Northeast and started chasing bluefin tuna, and what that process looked like, fishing Tahiti. Also too, in Australia, I loved all those books, but there's so many great, fishing writers over the last 50 years. John Gierak was great with the freshwater, stuff. I love John's work.
I would say, Skip Smith's book, The Tales of Her Hooker and Her Madam. That is just an incredible read.
Have to read that.
We've talked about that book a lot.
What that is basically this, Jerry Dunaway and his wife went around the world for 19 years chasing world record marlin. And he purchased a freighter, and Skip Smith was their captain, and they figured out how to get this sport fisher up on the back deck of the freighter that held like 70,000 gallons of fuel. And he'd leave Hawaii trolling at 6 knots an hour for 3 weeks to get to Australia and go chase all these marlin. It's one of the most amazing books you'll ever read.
Yeah. But I'd say the number one book for me would be The Longest Silence by Tom McGuane. I might have had to read that twice because I didn't fully understand some of the chapters because his writing is...
well, how about 92 in the Shade?
Oh, no, forget about it. Forget about it.
Well, one of the interesting, Tom's a good friend of ours, and we asked him one time, why did he write so complicated in his early years? Remember? And he said that there were certain parts of all of his books he was writing for the Illuminati. He was writing for Jim Harrison and these other guys that were great writers, and they didn't care about the audience.
He was trying to impress his friends.
Yes, exactly right. But in doing so, it was so far over your head. Like, I used to have to read these pages like 2 or 3 times.
Yep.
And the worst book I ever read was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I read this book. It was like 750 pages, small print. It took me forever to read it, and I never understood one word. And 20 years later, I reread it, and I still didn't understand it, but I waged through it, trying to get through it.
Moby Dick?
Moby Dick is the greatest fishing book ever. It's got to be. And the writing is just so classic.
Okay, let's see. Last couple questions. GB Waterman says, why don't you permit fish?
I would permit fish if I was in an area where it was just exclusive permit and bonefish. Like if I was in Belize, I'd permit fish a lot. But if I'm down in the Florida Keys fishing and I can catch 100-pound fish right over there, or maybe go scare a couple permit over there, I'm going to go catch that 100-pound tarpon. Mm-hmm. That's what I would gravitate to. I'm a success oriented guy.
Yeah, but when you first got started fishing with Harry Spear, like back in the 80s, did you guys go out permit fishing?
Yeah, we'd permit fish on certain days, and I ended up winning the Del Brown with Dustin, but that was more of a challenge to win.
You wanted to check that one off.
I wanted to win a permit tournament.
Yeah.
And I've caught maybe 20 in my life, but I've never really been a guy to go target permit unless it's a certain situation and there's nothing else available.
Have you ever seen really good permit fishing in the Keys? Like where you're getting 20 and 30 shots?
No, I haven't. I mean, my good days of permit fishing are you're getting maybe 5 shots.
Yeah.
It's like I told Dan Laren this morning, I used to ski at 80 miles an hour. It's hard to fish at 0. I have a hard time keeping my concentration and my enthusiasm up if maybe once every 2 hours you get a shot.
I would like to throw live crabs at them. We've done that a little bit, and that is fun.
That's fun.
Because you're going to get rewarded.
I like catching them.
Yeah.
But if I would, I would definitely go to Blease and go permit fishing. Without question.
But you have done that.
I have done that.
So
but
is that fun?
Yes. By
the way, when you catch a 10-inch permit and you send me a photo, that's not a permit.
It doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
It doesn't count. You know what? Let me talk about permit fishing for a second. If you take a look at how you catch fish, if you're trying to catch a record fish, you cannot be further away than the length of your fly rod. So if you have a guide,
I know what you're going to say,
netting your fish, he's got to be right next to you here, right? He can't be 150 yards out on a flat, grabbing your leader.
It drives me fucking crazy.
And grabbing your permit.
That, yeah.
He's out there and you're over here by the boat. And then he throws his arms up like you caught this permit. No, that does not work.
No, you got to bring it to the boat.
You got to catch that fish. You can't have somebody out there, or you're up on a bank and somebody's 50 yards down the river, netting your salmon.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's just not right.
Yeah. I'm
sorry.
Yeah. I also don't like, this might sound strange, but I don't like when another person is in the skiff or panga with you. I have not experienced this, but I see this on social media and I see this on TV shows where there's a second guide, and I think that second guide is actually in training. So that's cool. It's normally a younger guide that's in training to become a guide. So he's on the skiff with you or on the panga with you. But when you're hooking up to a fish and you're clearing your line, the other guide has the fly line in his hands and he's trying to get rid of all the tangles. Have you seen that?
No, but no one can touch your line or your rod.
Don't touch my line.
No.
Don't touch
Stay
my
away.
line.
And also too, if the best guides in the world are in the Florida Keys. You hook a fish, they pull their asses off after the fish, right? And if they get off the line or in some deeper water, you can lower the motor and chase your fish and go after it. I've been in areas around the world where you hook this tarpon and it's flopping and running 200 yards away and they're waiting for you to deadboat this thing. You cannot catch a big fish unless you're, 30, 40 feet from it, where you can really pull on your fly line, the fat part of your fly line, and fight them. You can't fight a big fish 200 yards away. You gotta close that gap. And like I lost a big permit one time in Belize. We were down there fishing. I hooked this permit and he takes off. Well, he's gone. And I'm waiting for the guy to pull this panga or maybe get it off the flat so we can go over and get this permit, and it eventually opens the hook. I lose this fish.
That's another thing we should probably bring up. When we hook a tarpon in the Keys, we're not really pulling on the fish until you get the fat part of the fly line.
No.
And a lot of people don't understand that. They think you hook up to the tarpon, you clear your line, and you start pulling, you start the fight. That's not the...
It's not an effective way to catch a fish.
It's not an effective way to catch a fish.
Yeah.
It's not very productive.
Yeah.
You hook up, you get your fly line all cleared. Now you're on the reel, and your backing could be out there. He could be 100 yards out there, 200 yards out there. You start the motor, and we slowly motor up, and you're just reeling in your backing with not a lot of tension. With tension, but not a lot of tension. And once you get that fat part of your fly line, now you can start to hang on to that fly line and really start to pull. Mm-hmm. And if he screams off again and takes backing, you put the boat in gear and reel up there, reel up your back and get to that fat part of fly line. Am I correct on that?
Well, it's just like the Ali rope-a-dope scenario where when you hook a big fish, he's got so much power, you can't fight him at that point. Just let him jump. Put some pressure on him. Let him jump. Let him swim. Let him go. Let him do whatever he wants, because you're going to be ineffective with whatever you do. So he's got to tire himself out, right? So once he saddles down, now you can move the boat closer. Now you can start pulling on his face, and you can effectively catch that fish. Because if you do anything before that, like a tight drag, trying to stop him, he's going to jump out of the water and break you off every time.
Yeah. All right, let's do this last question from Harry Goods Outfitters. How has social media impacted fisheries positively and negatively?
I think twofold. I mean, it works both ways. You can't have it one way and not the other. It's put more people on the water. But what it's also done, it's given people a reason to hope. You know, let's just say somebody commented recently, they always say, well, you always talk about you got to just go fish here, you got to go there, but that's unreasonable for a working man with kids. But what it does, it shows you what's out there. Like Flip Pallett did with his Walker Cay Chronicle show. For me as a skier, I was a trout guy. I had never gone to the ocean yet, but I wanted to be in Flip's boat. I saw these fish. I saw the marlin. I saw the tarpon. I saw the bonefish. I wanted to go do that at some point in my life. So, you know, you jump forward 15, 20 years, and now you've been able to save a little bit of money. The kids are out of school. Now you can actually go out and realize that there are 40-pound redfish you can catch in Louisiana, or you can go to the Northeast and catch stripers. It shows you what people are actually doing out there. It's put more people on the water, of course, but also, too, it shows you the big spectrum that fly fishing has in the world. And the world has really become a small place, you know, because fish are being caught, you know, all around the world. Great fish. And it gives you a reason to go somewhere like the east side of Africa to go catch these giants or whatever it might be. You know, the downside is, yeah, it's gotten crowded out there, but you know, it's a different world. There's like Mangum says, there's too many rats in the cage, and we're one of them.
Yeah, I have a different perspective on the negative impacts. I mean, I think it really stresses out the fish. You know, fish handling has a lot of people are abusing fish. Yeah. And, you know, you don't need to take a photo of every fish you catch. Mm-hmm. You don't need to take a photo of the 14-inch rainbow trout you caught.
And post it every day.
Yeah, no, it's like, come on.
I'm not on social media, but when I kind of glance through some Instagram stuff, it's like, how many photographs of a fish do you want to post of yourself?
Right. And like what Eric Herstead said, like a bonefish is really slippery. I mean, extremely slippery if you've never held a bonefish. And when these guys want a photo of a bonefish, they used to, you know, bring him into the boat, hold the bonefish out. 9 times out of 10, that bonefish is going to come out of your hands and he's going to flop in the deck with your non-skid and wipe every inch of slime off his protective, you know, body. You put him back in the water. There's probably hand marks all over the bonefish. You put him in the water. He barely swims off, and, you know, God knows what happens 50 yards away from the boat. But, you know, if it's a big fish or if it's a really meaningful fish or whatnot, take a photo of it. Who cares? Mm-hmm. But don't take a photo of every fish you catch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree.
Then I also think that it's social media is positive in the fact where you can support and kind of tag along with great organizations like Captains for Clean Water, Bonefish Tarpon Trust. They keep you up to date on what's going on.
Which is imperative. It's
which is
really
imperative.
Yeah.
You know, and the videos and the content that they put out is really important, and it keeps you engaged. And I think that's important. That's an important part of social media, mm-hmm. is to understand what's going on with our environment, with our fisheries, And if they say, please take this survey, which takes 1 minute, take the survey, help out. So I think it's good in that regard, and it's bad in other ways. But for the most part, I think it's all right. I don't know. I'm not a huge hater.
Yeah, it's like Steve Huff does. Just do your own thing, and who cares who's looking? Who cares who's watching?
Yep. Alrighty. I think that's we're gonna wrap up. It's almost an hour and a half.
Wow.
Yep.
I hope you all like it.
Anything else you want to say, Andy?
I'm good.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
When I saw his sad story, when I saw it's just a